Story 1. My phone keeps recording me while I sleep, and I'm not alone in the footage. I found a video on my phone that I don't remember taking. The first thing that stood out was its length. Nearly 4 hours. I don't record long videos. In fact, I don't really record videos at all. But there it was, sitting in my gallery, time-stamped from 1:03 a.m. to 4:51 a.m. My phone had automatically labeled it bedroom, low light. My stomach twisted into a knot as I tapped the screen. For a few seconds, it was just black, and then the image adjusted, and I saw myself asleep. The angle was completely wrong. It was too low, positioned somewhere near the foot of my bed, propped upright and pointing directly at me. I have absolutely no memory of putting my phone there. At first, as I watched, nothing happened. Just me lying still, my chest rising and falling rhythmically, the sheets tangled around my legs. The room looked exactly as it should. Familiar, normal, safe. I decided to scrub through the video's timeline, watching hours pass in just a few seconds. Then, at around the 2:17 a.m. mark, something changed. It wasn't something I could see. It was a shift in the atmosphere of the room. The darkness in the corner by my closet suddenly seemed thicker. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It felt more like an absence of light, a void. I leaned closer to my phone's screen, trying to make sense of it. And that's when I heard the breathing. It was faint, almost lost in the soft hum of my fan, but it was there, and it wasn't my breathing. It wasn't in sync with the rise and fall of my own chest. My breathing was slow and steady, the breathing of someone deep in sleep. The sound on the video was rough, uneven, and felt unnervingly close to the microphone. I turned the volume all the way up, a decision I regretted almost immediately. The sound filled my ears, a dry, rasping inhale and exhale that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Kept watching, my heart pounding against my ribs. At 2:43 a.m., the mattress dipped. Not where I was lying, but at the very foot of the bed. It's a subtle depression, the kind you'd make if you were gently testing the strength of the fabric. My sleeping self didn't move an inch. The camera, of course, remained perfectly still. But the darkness near the closet, it shifted. Something seemed to peel itself away from the shadows. It wasn't a clear separation. It was just enough to suggest a shape, a form that hadn't been there a moment before. I paused the video. My hands were trembling. I got up and walked to my bedroom door. It was locked just as I'd left it before going to bed. The window was shut and latched. I threw open my closet door, half expecting something to be there. It was exactly as I'd left it. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was missing. And nothing had been added, except for the 4-hour video on my phone. I walked back to my bed, sat down, and with a deep breath, I pressed play. It didn't rush into the frame. It didn't crawl or creep. It simply entered. It moved with a quiet confidence, as if it knew exactly where the camera was, where to stand to remain just out of full view. The shape was all wrong. It was tall, yet it seemed compressed, hunched over. Its outline was blurry, indistinct at the edges, as if the camera sensor was struggling to process what it was seeing. It came to a stop at the foot of my bed. It just stood there, facing me. Watching, it didn't lean over me. It didn't seem to breathe. It didn't make a sound. It just observed. The stillness was terrifying. It was as if it was confirming something, or maybe waiting for a specific signal. A cold dread washed over me as I realized the truth. My phone hadn't been placed there to record me. It had been placed to record this. At 3:06 a.m., my sleeping self finally moved. I rolled slightly onto my side. The thing reacted instantly. Its posture changed. It wasn't startled, not like you or I would be. It was alert. It's like a sentinel noticing movement on its watch. It leaned forward just enough for the camera to catch a little more detail. There was still no face, just a smooth, dark surface, a suggestion of where a face ought to be. Then I heard it. A whisper. It was layered so deeply beneath the sound of the breathing that I almost missed it. It was so quiet, it felt like an accidental capture. But when I isolated the audio track, slowed it down, and amplified the levels, words began to emerge. They were fragmented, broken, but they were undeniably deliberate. Still, a long pause, and then, it's not ready. Just as I was trying to process what that could possibly mean, my phone chimed. A new file had just appeared in my gallery. The timestamp was from last night, but I hadn't slept yet. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I opened it. The angle was different. It was much closer to my face. The room lights were on, and I was awake. I was staring directly into the camera, my eyes wide, unblinking. In the video, I watched my own hand reach forward and carefully, precisely, adjust the phone's position. Then, I watched myself lie back down, close my eyes, and seemingly fall asleep. The timestamp read 1:01 a.m. 2 minutes before the first video, the 4-hour recording began. I have no memory of doing this, none at all. Then I saw it. There was a note on my nightstand that wasn't there before. It was a piece of plain paper, folded neatly. The handwriting was mine. Read, "You don't wake up when it's here. That's good. Don't change that." My chest felt tight, like a band was constricting around it, because the implication was terrifyingly clear. This wasn't the first time. That night, I powered my phone off completely. I was terrified. No camera, no microphone, no recording. I convinced myself that whatever this thing was, it depended on being observed, that if I took away the camera, it wouldn't come. I was wrong. I woke up at exactly 2:17 a.m. I didn't wake up to a sound. I woke up to a feeling. A pressure on my legs. It wasn't a weight. It was a presence. The air in the room felt heavy, dense. The space felt smaller, compressed, as if the very walls were leaning in to listen. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't dare to move. I remembered the note. You don't wake up when it's here, so I forced myself to pretend. I focused on my breathing, keeping it slow and even, praying it was convincing, and then I heard it. The soft, familiar chime. The unmistakable vibration of my phone powering on. By itself. I heard the camera lens click. Once, twice. Something near the foot of the bed shifted. There was a sense of satisfaction. I waited until the sun was fully up before I dared to check my phone. Told myself watching it in the daylight would make it easier. It didn't. The video showed my bedroom from that same terrible angle. My phone had been placed back at the foot of the bed. The thing was there, but it stood closer this time, nearer to my legs. It was leaning slightly forward. At the 3:33 a.m. mark, it reached out a long, thin limb. It stopped just inches from my foot. It paused there for a long, agonizing moment. And then, it withdrew its hand, as if it was reconsidering. I started to see the patterns. It only arrived when I was fully asleep. It never actually touched me. It recorded every single visit. It even adjusted the camera itself. It was always gone before morning. This thing wasn't hunting me. It wasn't trying to feed on my fear. It was documenting. It was waiting for something to change. Digging through my phone's file system, I found it. A hidden folder I never created. Inside were dozens of videos. All of them labeled with dates, spanning months, even years. Each video was the same. Me sleeping. My appearance changed from one to the next. My hair was longer. I looked younger. I was in bedrooms of apartments I barely remembered living in. And in every single video, in the corner, in the shadows, was the same thing. Watching, waiting. The very last file in the folder wasn't a video. It was a placeholder. It was titled with a future date, tomorrow. And in the field for the video's duration, it just read, unknown. As I stared at that, a new note appeared on my phone screen. Not handwritten this time, typed. The message was simple. If you wake up while it's recording, it will stop waiting. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed right now, shaking, because suddenly, all of it makes sense. Why it never touches me. Why it reacts when I stir in my sleep. Why it always stops short. It needs me unconscious, unaware, unresisting. So tonight I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to let my phone record. I'm going to do exactly what I've apparently always done. It's because the alternative is so much worse. Because if I wake up, if I fight back, if I interrupt whatever this process is, the thing that watches me every night won't have to stop. It won't have to wait. It won't need my permission anymore. So check your phone. If you ever find a video you don't remember recording, if it runs for hours, if the angle just feels wrong, watch it very carefully. And if you see something standing just outside the frame, whatever you do not wake yourself up, because some things are only patient while you're asleep. Thanks for listening. Story 2. Every night, my neighbor drags a chair across the ceiling. I live on the top floor. The first time I heard it, I checked the lease. It's not a joke. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, scrolling through the digital copy, searching for any clause that explained how someone could possibly be above me. There wasn't one, because I live on the top floor. There are no units above mine. There is no attic, no crawl space. Just a flat concrete roof and a locked maintenance hatch that no one uses. And yet, every night at 1:42 a.m., something drags a chair across my ceiling. It didn't sound aggressive. That was the strange part. No banging, no stomping, just the slow, deliberate scrape of wood or metal against concrete. Like someone adjusting their seat, pulling it back, and stopping. Waiting. I assumed it was pipes. Or thermal expansion. Buildings make noises. I've lived in apartments long enough to know that, but pipes don't pause. And they don't start again at the exact same time every night. On the 5th night I timed it. The dragging lasted exactly 33 seconds. Not 30, not 35, 33. Then silence. No footsteps. No shifting weight. Just absence. Like whoever had moved the chair was now sitting very still, directly above my bed. I finally mentioned it to the building manager, casually, like it was nothing. "Hey," I said, "I hear something above my unit at night. Sounds like furniture." Her smile froze. "Just for a second. There's no one above you," she replied. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm asking." She nodded slowly, then said something that didn't sit right. "Does it stop if you stay awake?" I stared at her. She cleared her throat. "Old buildings," she said. "It's lots of strange acoustics." She didn't meet my eyes again. The 8th night, the sound changed. Instead of dragging from one end of the ceiling to the other, it moved toward the center of my bedroom. Above my bed, the scrape was softer now, closer, more precise, as if whoever was up there had learned exactly where I slept. That night, I noticed something else. Shadow on my ceiling. Faint, not moving. Right where the sound always stopped. I turned on the lamp. The shadow vanished. I turned it off. It returned, perfectly circular, about the size of a chair seat. The note appeared the next morning. No envelope, no handwriting I recognized. Just printed words. "Do not look up when IT moves." My heart dropped, because I already had. The next night, the dragging began at 1:17 a.m., then 1:03, then 12:49. Each night, it started sooner. As if whatever was up there was growing impatient, or more comfortable. So the dragging lasted longer too, sometimes over a minute. Sometimes ending with a soft tap. It's like a chair leg being set down carefully. I heard footsteps on the roof once, just once. Light. Measured. They moved in a slow circle, then stopped directly above my bedroom. The dragging followed immediately after. Louder than ever. Angrier. As if I had broken a rule by listening. Another note appeared. This time taped to my bathroom mirror. It sits when you listen. I stared at my reflection, pulse pounding, because that meant it knew. Knew when I was awake. Knew when I noticed. Knew when I listened. I only realized later that the sound never happened if I was already asleep. Only when I was awake. It's only when my thoughts were active. Alert. Observing, like the sound itself was meant to anchor my attention, to keep me aware, to keep me present. I decided to test it. Coffee. Lights on. No distractions. At 12:30 a.m., I sat on my bed and waited. At 12:42, the dragging began. But this time, it didn't stop. The chair scraped back and forth. Over and over. Longer. Heavier. As if whoever was moving it had grown tired of waiting. Then, the ceiling began to dip. Not crack, not break. Just bow, slightly, like weight being applied gradually. I stood up. The sound stopped immediately. The ceiling returned to normal. The silence felt deliberate, observant. The third note was waiting for me when I returned from work the next day, pinned to my corkboard. IT does not like when you stand. My legs felt weak, because that meant it was paying attention to more than sound. It was tracking position, orientation, awareness. I finally accessed the maintenance hatch. It took effort, and a broken lock. The roof was empty, flat, featureless. No chairs, no marks. But when I stood directly above my bedroom, I felt it. A pressure beneath my feet. Like the roof wasn't solid. Like something was pressing upward from below. That night, I dreamed of a chair. Simple, wooden, old. It sat upside down on my ceiling, its legs pressed gently into the plaster, waiting. Then the sound moved inside the room. It started quietly, a faint scrape, not above me, behind me, inside my bedroom. I froze. The sound wasn't on the ceiling anymore. It was on the floor, dragging, slow, deliberate. Behind my bed, I didn't need to see it. I understood. The chair wasn't moving from above, it was changing orientation. The boundary had shifted. Ceiling, floor, direction didn't matter anymore. Only attention. The last note appeared on my pillow. IT only needs one place to sit. I slept on the couch after that, then at a friend's place, then in my car. The dragging follows. It's always just out of sight, always just out of reach, waiting for me to lie down. I sleep sitting up now. Lights on, back against the wall. Because chairs exist for one reason. If you ever hear one dragging above you in a place where no one should be, do unlie down. Because something is looking for a surface. And once it finds one, it will finally sit. Story 3. The emergency broadcast on my radio wasn't meant for this timeline. I don't remember why I kept the radio. It was old, far older than anything I normally owned. Analog dial, scratched casing, a faint hum even when it was turned off, like it was always halfway tuned to something it couldn't quite reach. I found it in a box when I moved into the house. No receipt, no memory of buying it. I just assumed it belonged to the previous owner and forgot about it, till the night it turned itself on. It happened at 1:11 a.m. Not loud, not sudden. Just the sound of static, gently increasing, as if someone far away had slowly turned a knob. I sat up in bed, heart racing, listening as the static settled into a low, steady hiss. Then a voice came through, clear, calm, professional. "This is an emergency broadcast," it said. "Please remain indoors." I frowned. There was no alert on my phone, no sirens, no flashing lights outside. The voice continued. "This message is not intended for those who are asleep." My stomach tightened, because I was awake. I reached for the radio. I really did. But the moment my fingers hovered above the dial, the static sharpened. The voice paused, then resumed slightly closer to the microphone. "Do not adjust your receiver." My hand froze. The voice hadn't sounded threatening. It sounded corrective, like I had almost made a mistake. The broadcast continued. "Remain in the room you currently occupy," the voice instructed. "Avoid doorways, avoid mirrors, avoid checking the time." I glanced instinctively at my phone. Screen was black, unresponsive. The voice sighed, just barely audible. He said, "Avoid checking the time." A chill ran down my spine, because I hadn't spoken, hadn't made a sound. The voice never raised its volume, never hurried. It spoke the way a flight attendant does during turbulence, reassuring, practiced, careful not to alarm. "This event is temporary," it said. "Discomfort is expected, confusion is normal, curiosity will make it worse." The static crackled softly. "You are doing well so far." I didn't like that. It sounded like I was being graded. The voice paused again, and said my name. Perfectly. It's pronounced the way only people who knew me well ever got right. "This is not your first broadcast," it continued. "You simply do not remember the others." My pulse hammered in my ears. I whispered, "What is this?" The radio responded instantly. "This is containment." The explanation came in fragments, not all at once. The voice was careful not to overload me. "There are moments," it said, "when realities drift too close, when signals overlap, when information leaks." The static deepened. Most people sleep through these moments. I felt suddenly exposed, like being awake had put me on a list. "You did not," the voice continued. "You rarely do." The radio crackled again. "Please remain seated." That's when I stood up. I don't know why. Reflex, maybe. Fear. Defiance. The moment my feet touched the floor, the static spiked violently. The voice lost its calm. Please sit back down. I didn't. The walls of the room felt uncertain, like they weren't sure where to be. The lights dimmed without flickering. The air thickened. The sound felt delayed. My own breathing seemed to arrive a fraction too late in my ears. The radio spoke again, quieter now. This is why we advise compliance. The voice told me about the other broadcasts, about the other versions of me. Other nights, other rooms, other outcomes. In some broadcasts, you panic, it said. In others, you investigate. In one, you unplug the radio. The static pops sharply. That one ends quickly. I sat back down. Just then, another voice bled through the static. Fainter, distorted, urgent. Can you hear me? This is not the primary voice cut in smoothly. Disregard secondary transmission. The other voice fought through anyway. If you're hearing this, you're not where you're supposed to be. My heart pounded. Turn it off. The second voice pleaded. It's lying about the broadcast window. The radio crackled violently. The primary voice returned, colder. Secondary transmission terminated. The static settled. Took me too long to realize. The cadence. The pauses. The careful phrasing. The primary voice sounded like me. Not exactly, but close enough to be unsettling. Like a version of my voice that had practiced being calm for a very long time. There is a convergence occurring, the voice said. Your environment is misaligned. I looked around the room. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. That is not reassuring, the voice added. That is camouflage. The static deepened again. This time something moved within it. Not sound, shape, a pattern that didn't belong to audio. The voice lowered. That is what we are containing. I felt a pressure behind my eyes. It's a sense of being observed from an angle that didn't exist. It has learned to listen, the voice continued. It prefers awake minds. Asleep minds are unfocused, the voice explained. Their edges are soft, hard to grab. The static pulsed. You are sharp right now, defined. Bright, I swallowed. Stop listening, I whispered. The radio clicked softly. Listening is already complete. The voice explained the window. 7 minutes. Sometimes less, sometimes more. A span where information traveled sideways instead of forward, where signals crossed, where attention mattered more than location. This window is closing, the voice said. You must remain still until it passes. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Then the second voice slipped through again, quietly. Not loud enough to interrupt, just enough to overlap. It doesn't stop when the window closes, it whispered. It just stops warning you. The primary voice hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. That hesitation terrified me more than anything else. The static rose. The room felt thin, like a photograph stretched too far. You may disconnect, the primary voice said slowly. But doing so transfers containment responsibility. I stared at the radio. What does that mean? I asked. Silence, then. It means you will hear the broadcasts instead. The radio doesn't send messages, it receives them. From places that cannot afford to be heard too clearly. From timelines that failed to contain what they noticed. The radio wasn't a warning system, it was a buffer, and buffers wear out. The broadcast ended abruptly. Oh, sign off. No static fade. Just silence. The radio clicked off. The lights returned to normal. My phone lit up with missed notifications. Everything looked ordinary, too ordinary. There was a note beside the radio, written in my handwriting, but steadier, more confident. It said, "Next time, don't ask questions. I don't remember writing it. So, if an emergency broadcast ever interrupts your silence, if it tells you not to move, if it knows you're awake, listen carefully. Because some messages aren't meant to save you. They're meant to keep something else contained. If the broadcast ever stops mid-sentence, that means the responsibility has changed hands. Thanks for listening. Be careful out there." Story 4. Everyone on my street agreed to the rules except the house that appeared last night. I've lived on Alder Creek Lane for 11 years. It's not a remarkable street. Just 12 houses, one dead end, no sidewalks, and by our own agreement, no streetlights. We liked the dark. We liked knowing that any pair of headlights belonged to someone we recognized. Nothing ever changed on Alder Creek Lane. That was the rule. It wasn't written down anywhere or even spoken aloud. It It was just understood. And then, one morning, there were 13 houses. I noticed it while taking out the trash. Right at the far end of the cul-de-sac, where the road just curves into the trees, there stood a house I had never seen before in my life. It was 2 stories tall with gray siding, but it had no driveway, no mailbox. There were no tire marks in the gravel leading to it. It looked old, but not abandoned. It looked maintained, intentional, like it had always been there, except it hadn't. My trash bag slipped from my hand and burst open on the pavement, and that's when I realized something else. None of the other neighbors were reacting. Mrs. Hanley was watering her plants. The Collins kids were riding their bikes in lazy circles around the cul-de-sac. Mr. Reese stood in his garage just reorganizing his tools like he did every Saturday. No one looked at the new house. No one slowed down as they passed. No one stared. Walked up to Mrs. Hanley. "Did you see the house at the end of the street?" I asked. She smiled at me, a tight, polite smile. "Ouch," she said. Her eyes flicked toward the trees for just half a second, then right back to me. That night, someone knocked on my door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I opened it to find Mr. Reese, Mrs. Hanley, and the Collins father standing shoulder to shoulder on my porch.
"Howie?"
No one was smiling.
"We noticed."
"You noticed it," Mr. Reese said, his voice low. "Noticed what?" I asked, trying to sound confused. Mrs. Hanley exhaled slowly, a little puff of mist in the cool night air. "The house," she said. "The one we don't talk about." My stomach just dropped. "So you do see it," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. They exchanged these heavy looks. "Yes," Mr. Reese finally said. "But we don't acknowledge it." They invited themselves in. Sat down at my kitchen table like it was the most routine thing in the world. Mr. Collins spoke first. "When something new appears," he said, staring at his hands on the table, "we ignore it." Mrs. Hanley nodded. "That's how it stays quiet." I let out a nervous laugh. "You're joking, right?" No one joined me. The silence in the room was deafening. "The street has rules," Mr. Reese said, his voice firm. "You've followed them before." I just stared at him, completely bewildered. "I don't remember agreeing to anything." "That's normal," he replied, as if that explained everything. They explained it to me carefully, slowly, as if they were talking to someone who had once known all this and simply forgotten. "Things pass through places like this," Mrs. Hanley said softly. "Places that don't change. Most of the time," Mr. Collins added. "Right. They move on. But sometimes," Mr. Reese finished, his eyes dark. "They settle. And when they settle," Mrs. Hanley said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "they want to be noticed. Rule 1, Mr. Reese said, holding up a finger, is don't acknowledge the house. Rule 2, Mrs. Hanley continued, is don't let it know you can see it." I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. They hesitated, a new wave of tension filling the room. Finally, Mr. Collins spoke. "If it introduces itself," he said, "you do not answer." That night, at exactly 11:47 p.m., a light turned on in the upstairs window of the new house, a single warm glow, like someone was settling in for the night. I stood at my bedroom window, watching. I don't know why. Curiosity, I guess. Or maybe it was fear. The feeling that something important was happening. Across the street, every other house was dark. Every curtain was closed. Every porch was empty. There was only me and the house. The light flicked off, then on again, then off. Then the front porch light came on. Slow, deliberate. I instinctively stepped back from the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. A voice carried faintly through the night. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted. It was just conversational. "Hello?" called out. I froze, because it hadn't just said hello. It had said my name, perfectly, as if spoken by someone who had known me for years. "Come down," the voice said gently. "We should meet properly." Just then, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. A message from Mr. Reese. The screen lit up with his words in all caps. "Do not respond. Do not move. Do not let it hear you." 3 taps echoed through my house, from the front door. I hadn't heard any footsteps on the gravel. I hadn't seen anyone cross the street. The knocking came again. Polite, patient. "I know you're home," the voice said from my doorstep. My knees started to shake. I watched in horror as the doorknob turned slightly. then stopped. "Ah," the voice said, a hint of something unreadable in its tone. Still pretending. The neighbors explained it all later. Not that night, of course. That night, no one opened their doors. No lights turned on. The entire street just held its breath, wants permission. Mrs. Hanley told me the next morning, her face pale. "Permission to do what?" I asked. "To stay?" She said. "To change things," Mr. Reese added grimly. "Once it's acknowledged, it becomes permanent. But even without permission, small things started to shift. The trees at the end of the street seemed to lean closer to the house. Birds started avoiding that entire area. Sound carried strangely near the house, like whispers were being swallowed up. And sometimes, when I drove past, I swore the windows reflected scenes that weren't actually behind me, rooms I didn't recognize. People standing perfectly still inside, just waiting. One afternoon, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name, handwritten in elegant script. Inside was a short note. It said, "You're being rude. We've brought everything with us. We just need to be seen." My hands trembled as I held the paper. I looked up, and across the street, Mrs. Hanley was watching me from her window. She just shook her head once, slow, final. That night, a porch light flicked on at the new house, then another, and another, until every single light mirrored the pattern of our own street. It was as if it was learning, practicing, trying to blend in. A voice drifted through the cool night air again. "Is this better?" it asked, sounding almost hopeful. It was Mr. Collins who broke the rules. I saw him walking toward the house just after midnight. He was barefoot, and his eyes were glassy and unfocused. I called his name, but he didn't respond. He just kept walking. The front door of the strange house opened silently, spilling warm light onto the dark street. The door closed behind him. And the next morning, there were 14 houses on Alder Creek Lane. No one reported Mr. Collins missing. No one asked any questions. His original house remained. The lights were on a timer. His car was still in the driveway. Sometimes, I thought I saw a figure in the window that looked like him, but it waved too slowly. Its smile was too wide. I saw Mrs. Hanley crying that night, quietly into her hands, on her front porch. The neighbors held another meeting in my kitchen. Their faces were drawn, their voices hushed. "It's learned faster than the others," Mr. Reese said, his voice barely a whisper. "We may have to move," someone else whispered from the corner. Mrs. Hanley just shook her head. "It will follow," she said. Then they all turned and looked at me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice cracking. Mr. Reese swallowed hard. "Because it likes you," he said. "You noticed first." The knock came again that night. Softer this time, almost friendly. "We don't want to be neighbors who never speak," the voice said through the door. The doorbell rang, just once. A pleasant, simple chime. "Just say hello," it continued, its tone coaxing. "That's all it takes." My hand hovered over the doorknob. Behind me, every light in my house flickered. The walls creaked and groaned as if the whole house was urging me forward. I didn't open the door. I just slid down to the floor, right there in the entryway, covered my ears, and waited. The knocking stopped, eventually. The voice went silent. The lights in my house steadied. The new house remained. Today, there are 15 houses on Alder Creek Lane. Soon, there will be more. No one moves away. No one new moves in. We all just pretend not to notice. So the moment you acknowledge it, the moment you let it know you see it, it becomes a part of you. And it never, ever lets go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Story 5. Every night at 2:17, someone knocks from inside my apartment walls. Every night at 2:17, someone knocks from inside my apartment walls. The first time I heard it, I didn't think much of it. Apartments make noises. Pipes knock. Walls creak. Old buildings breathe in strange ways, especially at night. This building was old. Concrete from the 70s. Thin walls. Reputation for having character. So when I heard 3 dull knocks coming from the wall behind my bed at 2:17 in the morning, I just rolled over and tried to ignore it. 3 knocks. Evenly spaced. They weren't loud enough to be urgent, but they weren't soft enough to be accidental either. I told myself it was the plumbing. I was wrong. I only checked the clock because the sound felt deliberate. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It was 3 distinct knocks, then silence. My phone glowed in the dark. 2:17 a.m., I remember thinking that was an oddly specific time. I fell back asleep eventually. Really wish I hadn't. The next night, it happened again. The same sound, from the same wall, with the exact same spacing. 3 knocks. I sat bolt upright this time. I listened, waited, nothing followed. I checked the time. It's 17 a.m. That's when I started to feel uneasy. Coincidences happen, patterns do not. I got out of bed and pressed my palm against the wall. It was cold, solid. There was no door behind it, no access panel, no neighboring apartment. I knew the building's layout. On the other side of that specific wall was the building's central stairwell. Concrete, steel, empty space. There was nothing on the other side that could knock back. The next morning, I tried to ask the super about it. Casually, "Do you ever get noise complaints around 2 a.m.?" I asked, trying to sound like I was just curious. He frowned. "Why that time?" he asked. I just shrugged. No reason. He stared at me for a second longer than was comfortable. Then he said, "You shouldn't listen for things you weren't meant to hear," and he just walked away. On the 3rd night, I stayed awake. I sat on my bed, lights off, staring at the wall. 2:16 a.m., my heart was pounding in my chest. 2:17 a.m., 3 knocks. I didn't think. I just reacted. I knocked back. 3 quick taps with my knuckles against the drywall. The silence that followed felt heavy, thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then, 3 knocks came again. They sounded closer, from the same spot. A perfect mirror of my own. A voice came through next. It was muffled, filtered, like someone speaking through layers of concrete and water. "Thank you," it said. My blood ran cold. It sounded so close. Too close. As if the wall wasn't really separating us at all. "I've been trying for weeks," the voice continued, as people don't answer. My throat tightened. "What do you want?" I whispered into the darkness of my room. There was a long pause. Then the voice said, to be acknowledged, "It's very lonely between the walls." It explained itself slowly, patiently, like it was trying very hard not to scare me. "There are spaces buildings don't account for," it said. Dead zones. Structural gaps. Places no one finishes mapping. I leaned back, trying to put distance between me and the wall. "You're stuck?" I asked. "Yes," it replied. And no. The voice sounded almost amused. When it said my name, I almost screamed. "I hear everything," it explained gently. "Every conversation. Every dream you talk through in your sleep." I hadn't even known I'd talked in my sleep. The idea made my skin crawl. "You knocked first," it added. "That means you can hear me clearly." I became obsessed. I started researching the building, its old city records, internet forums, archived news articles. I found out that 3 tenants had gone missing over the years, all from different floors. All of them lived alone. All of them had reported noises in the weeks leading up to their disappearances. Their apartments were renovated afterward. Their walls were reinforced. The gaps were sealed, except for mine. The voice explained why. "You're above an expansion joint," it said. "A mistake in the design. Soft place." I didn't like the way it said the word soft. "You fit well there," it added. "Stop sleeping in my bedroom after that." I moved to the couch in the living room, but the knocking followed. Now, it came from the living room wall. It never said the rules out loud, but I learned them. It never knocked during the day. It never spoke unless I responded first. It never raised its voice. But every single night at 2:17, it knocked. 3 times. Waiting. Patient. Learning. Then came the night it knocked 4 times. I woke up already shaking. 4 knocks. Uneven. Impatient. "Something's wrong," the voice said through the wall, its tone urgent for the first time. "They're sealing the other gaps." I held my breath. "I don't want to be alone again. I can make space," it said. My stomach dropped. "What kind of space?" The wall creaked, a sound like old wood groaning under pressure. "I can widen the gap," it replied. "Just enough." The next morning, there was a hairline crack in the wall, vertical, running from the floor to the ceiling. I know it wasn't there before. When I pressed my ear against it, I could hear breathing. slow, content. The super knocked on my door that afternoon. Hard, urgent. Dave. Started hearing it again, he said, his voice low. Hearing what? I asked, playing dumb. His eyes flicked past me, to the wall with the new crack. She shouldn't have answered, he whispered, and then he left. At 2:17 a.m. that night, the crack widened. It didn't happen violently. It was careful. The wall bent outward, like soft clay being pushed from behind. A hand pressed through the plaster. It wasn't a human hand, but it wasn't wrong enough to make me scream. It just looked unfinished. I just need a little more room, the voice said from behind the parting wall. I didn't run, because a strange part of me understood. The building was full, crowded, loud, but the space between the walls was quiet, private, a place where no one would ever notice you disappearing. The hand withdrew. The wall sealed itself back up, leaving only the faint line of the crack. And then the knocking stopped. Days passed. No knocks, no voice. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. The crack remained, thin, waiting. I still hear knocking, but it's not from the wall anymore. It's from inside my own head. 3 soft taps every night, a little reminder. And sometimes when the building is quiet enough, when I'm lying perfectly still in the dark, I swear I hear someone on the other side of my wall knocking back.